I had to unmute myself. I'm here talking and muted. So let's try that again. Hello, hello, hello. And happy new year. I hope all is well with you. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm super excited to be having this conversation. One of the things that has come up a lot um, as I talk with people is I'm so tired of being strong. I'm so tired of being the strong one. So before I kick it all off, I just want to make sure that I am live in the Facebook group, and I don't see myself live there, which is weird. So let me just give me 1 second just to figure out what is going on. And then we are going to get started. Today we are talking about you didn't choose strength, it was forced on you. I don't understand why I can't see myself live. This is crazy. Well, we're going to move on. Hopefully, I am live somewhere and I am being seen somewhere. Um, but I don't want to hold up this live. It's just odd. I like to double check. It's telling me I'm live, but I don't see it. So we will move on. Let me just double check that I'm live on LinkedIn. At least I'm live there. Okay, so this live today is for the woman who has been praised her whole life for being strong, but no one ever asked her what that strength was costing her. The one who had to grow up too fast, the one who became the fixer, the nurturer, the peacemaker, because someone had to, the one who learned how to figure it out on her own, the one that had to hold it together, how she learned how to smile through her pain, how to get shit done because falling apart, well, that was not an option. So we're gonna cut the fluff for a moment. You didn't choose strength because it was empowering. You chose it because survival demanded it, because no one came to rescue you, because you learned early that your safety depended on your ability to stay composed, stay helpful, stay small, and often stay quiet. Strength became your armor, hyper independence that became your identity. And now you're tired. Not the kind of tired that needs a nap. Hello, Elsa. Um, but a so deep, burn heavy exhaustion that comes from carrying the emotional weight of someone else's chaos while never feeling safe enough to put your own down. You probably want softness. You probably crave ease, but you long for rest that doesn't come with guilt. But here's the thing, sis. When strength becomes survival, softness starts to feel like weakness. Rest feels like failure, and asking for help feels like a threat to the identity that you had to build just to make it out alive. So, this live is your permission slip to lay some of that weight down. We're going to be discussing how perfectionism becomes your prison, how performing strong is keeping you disconnected from the softness and safety that you have always been worthy of. You don't have to keep holding it together to prove your worth. You don't have to keep showing up like you're okay when you're cracking inside. You're allowed to be seen in your mess. You're allowed to be held in your healing. You're allowed to be soft and powerful and whole all at the same damn time. So I want you to buckle up because this first live of the year is going to be raw, it's going to be honest. It's going to probably sting a little, but I promise you it's all about getting you set free. And if this is your first time joining me, My name is Leticia. I am the survival mode disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates disruptive, unapologetic transformations for high achieving women who are ready to exit survival mode and take radical ownership of their lives and their growth. And I love having conversations about the residual impact of trauma. I love having conversations about working through trauma and getting out of survival mode. So if you've been rocking with me for a while, you already know that we don't do surface level healing over here. We go deep, we go raw, and we get real uncomfortable in the name of truth, transformation, and disrupting every damn pattern that has been keeping us stuck. So let's start disrupting survival mode together. So I want to start with the lie of the strong one. You were never just strong. You were made strong by the circumstance and often not by choice. Strongness comes through chaos, by silence, by the weight of expectations that landed on your chest long before your nervous system even finished developing. You became the strong one because there wasn't room to be anything else. Everybody leaned on you, but no one asked you if you were tired, if you were breaking, if you needed, or even asked you what you needed. Um, so you constantly just showed up and kept giving and giving. And I just want to reiterate that that is not strength, sis. That is emotional overcompensation. And I say that with love because I have absolutely lived it. So you may be saying to me, well, how did I become the strong friend? And oftentimes that strength is developed um, in childhood. Most of the strong ones weren't built, weren't born resilient. They were raised in homes where resilience was a requirement, where emotions were inconvenient, where you learned to bottle up things so you wouldn't be a burden, where love felt like a transaction. Be helpful, be quiet, be useful. And then you earned your worthiness. So you started performing strong as a child. Um, to earn safety. You became the peacemaker in the house full of tensions, the fixer in a space where there was no stability, the overachiever whose report card became a cry for an attention, the emotional vault who learned how to self soothe by stuffing it all down. You are often praised for your independence, but what you needed was to be held. What you needed was to be seen and understood. That's the setup. That is what you have been applauded for so long, for handling things so well while your nervous system was silently screaming for help. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, strength starts to feel like your only survival option. And if you are joining this, let me know that you understand what I'm saying, that you agree, so that I understand that I am on the right path here with these trainings. So let's talk about the real betrayal, the betrayal that no one saw when they told you how you amazing you were when you were just pushing through, how proud they were of you, that you didn't cry, that you didn't ask for anything, that you didn't make waves. That was not empowerment. That was emotional abandonment in disguise. And here's the truth that we don't talk about. When you are always the listener, you start to believe your voice doesn't matter. When you're always the helper, you start to believe that your needs are a problem. When you are always the dependable one, you start to believe that struggle is weakness. So you keep showing up like you've got it all handled because, well, vulnerability, it feels like exposure, but inside you're crumbling. because no one taught you how to be held. The only thing you know is how to hold. And I want to spend a second just like outlining the cost of performing strong, the reason why we're having this conversation today, right? This is this comes at a massive emotional cost to be the strong one. You become addicted to self reliance, but quietly resentful that no one shows up for you. You wear your independence like an armor, but you're lonely inside of it. You downplay your pain because you don't want to be too much. You overfunction in relationships, then wonder why no one meets you halfway. You don't ask for help. Gosh, I couldn't ask for help for nothing. But usually you don't ask for help until you're burnt out, until you're shut down, or maybe even sick. So I want you to really understand, sis, that strength isn't supposed to cost you yourself. But when your identity is rooted in being needed, you start confusing usefulness with worthiness. You believe you have to earn love by doing, not simply being. So you end up suppressing the parts of you that feels weak, tender, soft, and scared because you've been taught that those parts don't deserve space. But the truth is, softness doesn't mean that you are weak. Rest doesn't mean that you are lazy. And needing support doesn't mean that you're broken. What it means is that you're human. And oftentimes, when we're in survival mode, we're operating outside of our normal human response because we've learned to stuff everything. We've learned to keep everyone else around us comfortable, so we don't allow ourselves to feel. So, I want to slow down for a second and I want to take a breath. If you joined me before, you know that you should be bringing your notebook to write down some prompts because one of the things that I love to do with these trainings is really give you the awareness that you need in order to move forward. I believe that awareness is like a lighthouse. It gives you the opportunity to course correct. So I'm going to give you prompts throughout these trainings for you to go back and ruminate on, really be honest with yourself, so that you can get to a space where you are aware of the patterns that you are repeating. So here's something to write down and really think about. I want you to ask yourself, who taught me that need and help made me weak? Who taught me that need and help made me weak? Was it a parent who shamed your tears? A teacher who only noticed you when you achieved? Or it could have been a partner who called you dramatic when you were actually being vulnerable. I want you to ruminate on this. I want you to write it down. I want you to say it out loud. I want you to let the truth surface because the only way to reclaim your softness is to stop pretending that your strength never had a cost. Now we're going to move on from this, but in the next part, we're going to be diving into the identity crisis that happens when the strong one finally says, I can't do this anymore. When your armor gets too heavy, when your body starts screaming louder than the mask that you wear to hide. And when you realize strength isn't who you are, it's who you had to become. So, we're going to be talking about strength as a trauma response, right? Usually, this is when we become hyper independent, and I just want to remind you that that's not power, that's protection. You didn't choose strength, as I keep saying, because it made you feel powerful. You learned that strength because being vulnerable didn't feel safe. You were never taught that safe softness was allowed, that asking was okay, that receiving was safe. So you became this self-sufficient, hyper capable, and low maintenance woman. I definitely was that. very hyper capable, very independent, and I wouldn't ask for anything. And it's not because you wanted to be, but because you didn't trust that anyone would come through for you if you weren't, right? I know the source of that for me was being constantly disappointed by the people who I put my trust in. So I stopped asking and I stopped focusing on anybody else and started focusing on me. And this is what we need to unpack today: the way trauma hijacks your nervous system and turns strength into a survival mechanism. Because, sis, if your independence is rooted in fear, it is not freedom. It's a trauma response in a power suit, and often a very cute one. So let's uncover what the hyper independence really is. Hyper independence is not just about being driven or strong willed, it's the internal belief that if you rely on someone, you'll be disappointed, abandoned, or unsafe, right? And as I said earlier, that's what I learned very early on, that if I depended on someone outside of myself, I'm not going to get what I want. So it often looks like doing everything yourself because it feels safer than trusting someone else, downplaying your needs because you're scared that someone will use it against you, refusing help even when you're drowning, or feeling anxious when someone gets too close, too generous, and too supportive. How many of us have second guessed someone who has tried to help us? Like, what is your problem? Why you want to fix me? Does it sound familiar? You're not bad at receiving. You are wired to anticipate the fallout that comes with it. And that, again, is not a character flaw. It's your nervous system still living in survival mode. I think it's important for us to understand how trauma wires our brain for control, right? This is all based in science. When you experience trauma, especially the kind that's ongoing, like childhood neglect or abuse or instability, your nervous system doesn't just remember the danger, it rebuilds your entire operating system around avoiding it. You become hypervigilant. You scan for threats before joy. You need to control everything to feel safe. Because at some point, your body learned, I don't need anybody, they can't hurt. If I don't need anybody, they can't hurt me. If I can predict everything, I won't be blindsided. If I stay busy, I won't have to feel it. If I stay in control, I'll be safe. And one of the things that I used to do, if I'm honest, is I would conjure up the worst case scenario for every experience so that I felt prepared enough to deal with it, right? That's my body scanning for danger, making sure that I'm prepared. And I just want to remind you that this is not drive, this is defense. That's your body bracing for a threat that's no longer there, but it still feels real. So, you know, as someone who becomes hyper independent, we struggle with receiving. And I want to dig into why receiving feels so hard. You crave support, right? Oftentimes you're resentful that you don't get it. You dream of soft love. You wish you can rest and be held and not have to do it all. But when somebody actually shows up for you get anxious, you pull back, you doubt their motives, and essentially you sabotage it. But that's because receiving feels more vulnerable than giving, especially when you come from a space where your safety wasn't fully established. So when you give, you feel like you're in control. You get to decide the terms. You get to protect yourself in that moment. But when you receive, you have to be open. You have to trust. You have to let someone see you without the mask, without the checklist, without the doing. And for women like us, that level of surrender is terrifying because nobody taught us how to be held. They only taught us how to hold. So again, I want to stop and I want to pause. I want you to close your eyes for a minute if you feel safe to do so. And please, if you're listening to me driving, don't close your eyes. But I want you to ask yourself, and I also want you to write this down. What does it feel like in my body to let someone hold me? And I don't want you to answer this from an intellectual space. I want you to feel it. When you ask yourself that, are you feeling tension in your chest? Are you feeling a lump in your throat? Are you feeling tightness in your jaw? Do you notice a desire to run and joke and deflect? That's your nervous system saying this is unfamiliar, this is dangerous. But I want you to understand again the reason why I give you these prompts, the reason why I want you to spend some time digging into this is because that's that first step of accident survival mode, that awareness, right? This is not dangerous. This is new. It's the edge of your healing. And once you're able to uncover these things, once you're able to get clarity on these things, this is when the healing begins, right? Awareness is like a course correction opportunity. And oftentimes we don't see this. And you don't need to dive into it all at once. You can tiptoe towards softness. You can learn to let others pour into you without immediately reaching to pour back. And that's important. So I want to talk about how this strength often shows up in our lives. You say, I'm fine, when you're falling apart. You're the one who checks on everyone, but no one checks in on you. You feel guilty when you rest or when you say no. You feel resentment because you're always the one giving and never receiving. You secretly long for deep intimacy, but you keep your guard up sky high. And oftentimes we see that in our personal or interpersonal relationships where we have this dance of resentment and openness and vulnerability and guardedness because we haven't learned to fully embrace um not being strong in any given moment. This isn't about be this isn't because you're broken though. It's because you're still running that script that says that strength equals safety and needing others equals risk. But I want you to really understand that you are allowed to rewrite that because real strength isn't doing it alone. It's knowing when to lean. It's knowing when to rest. It's knowing when to say, I'm not okay right now. Can you hold me? That strength is rooted in truth and it's not rooted in trauma. So, this is a really, this is an invitation, and I want you to start small. Let someone make a cup of tea for you and receive it. Let yourself cry and not rush to explain it. Let your body rest without feeling like you have to earn it first. Because you are worthy of care without conditions. You are allowed to need without shame. You don't have to earn softness because you already deserve it. And we're going to talk a bit more about this as we move on, right? We're going to be peeling back the armor layer by layer and learning how to embrace softness without losing yourself. So, I did a conference at the end of the year, end of last year, about around grit. And I talked about grit being this thing that we honor, but we don't always recognize that grit often comes from a space of survival. And if we are gritty from survival, we never thrive, right? You're not thriving, you're surviving in high definition when you're leaning into grit. So, if you have been listening to this so far and shaking your head or nodding your head and saying, that's me, this section of this training might hit the hardest. We've talked about how you learn strength. We have unpacked how hyper independence became your armor. But now we're going to talk about the price because, again, I'm going to reiterate this. You're not lazy, you're not inconsistent, you're not unmotivated. You're burnt out because you're still producing while no one notices. And sometimes not even you. Because survival mode strength, similar to survival mode grit, it doesn't stop to check in. It just keeps going and going and going until you finally break. You may be high achieving, but oftentimes you're barely breathing, right? So let's talk about what high functioning burnout actually looks like. You're meeting deadlines, but you feel numb about doing it. You're not proud of yourself for achieving, right? You show up smiling, but you feel rage and sadness underneath. You wear that mask without even thinking. You're constantly tired, even after a full night's sleep. You're hyper productive, and that feels like you're falling behind. You're on for others, but you're off inside. You've tricked everyone, including yourself, into thinking that you're fine because you're still performing, you're still showing up, you're still doing all of the things. But what you're really doing is surviving in high definition. You have mastered the art of looking successful while you are quietly crumbling. And the reason why burnout feels normal to you, it's not just about working too hard. It's about living in constant overdrive. It's a nervous system collapse after years of being stuck in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. You weren't doing too much. You were doing it all without safety. And because of that, your nervous system doesn't trust rest, and even a downtime feels unsafe. So you keep grinding because, again, rest feels unfamiliar, stillness triggers your emotions, slowing down becomes slowing down makes you feel unproductive, unworthy, unsafe. And again, that's not ambition. Like, we aren't meant to burn out, right? Like, that's a lack of boundaries. It's always about your trauma talking. No wonder you feel tired. You are running on fumes, and you probably have been doing so for years. But because the tank never hits zero, you don't stop, you don't pause, you don't notice until your body forces you to. And I've always said this. When I started my business, I hadn't been in business more than 6 months, and I hit a wall. I completely burnt out. And it wasn't until I burnt out that I actually believed that Black people burnt out. Because I grew up with the conditioning that you work and work and work and work, and you do all the things that you need to do, and you don't question it. You just keep going. You just keep achieving. You don't let your circumstances stop you from doing the things that you need to do. But burnout is real, and oftentimes we don't consider that in our emotional space. We may consider that we might burn out at work, but oftentimes that burnout is rooted in our inability to work beyond our trauma responses. So I want to talk about signs that you're burning out and you don't even realize it. And again, I didn't realize it until I literally hit a wall. Some of these symptoms that no one talks about is crying randomly with no logical reason, or getting sick more often, brain fog, forgetting the simplest of things, feeling unmotivated for things you used to love, or reacting with irritation to the smallest things, feeling like you're watching your life instead of living it, or perhaps wanting to be alone more and more, but you're feeling lonely when you do so. Burnout doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, I'm tired of being everything for everyone. I'm tired of keeping it together. I just want to feel like myself again. And underneath it all, that quiet ache for someone, anyone to say, you can put it down. You don't have to carry it all. So we have a comment from uh, LinkedIn. Patricia says, Val said, we are becoming more aware of the chronic stress that we carry daily and also understanding nervous system reset. Absolutely. These conversations are so key. We often, especially in the Black community, like we were conditioned from young to work twice as hard for half as much. We never really talked about how that shows up for us. We didn't talk about nervous system regulation. You just kept going and going. And that's why I'm having these weekly trainings, because I want people to actually recognize that your conditioning is probably keeping you knee deep in survival mode. The way that the narratives you hold, the beliefs that you hold, they are keeping you stuck. So before we move on, I want to do a quick little exercise, which is like a nervous system check in. It's 60 seconds. I want you to get grounded. I want you to sit or stand with both feet on the floor. And I want you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and then let it out slowly. And now I want you to ask yourself, where in my body do I feel tension right now? What emotion is sitting just beneath the surface? And what do I need right now that I am ignoring? And then I want you to take one slow breath through your nose, hold it for the 3 or 4 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth. And as you exhale, I want you to repeat this line out loud. Say it out loud. I do not have to prove I'm okay to deserve rest, to deserve peace. Because the reality is you don't. So when you are feeling overwhelmed, I want you to do this practice, right? Take note of where you're feeling tension, get clarity on the emotion that is sitting beneath the surface, and then get clarity on what do you need in that moment. And whatever you need, do your best. If you need rest, go get rest. If you need to speak to somebody, go speak to somebody. If you just need to go for a walk, go for a walk. You owe it to yourself to be honest with yourself and get grounded. So, now let's quickly talk about the hidden grief of being strong too long. Here's something we don't talk about. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is grieving who you had to be to survive. The always ready one, the dependable one, the one who didn't cry, didn't ask, didn't pause. She got you here. But the truth is, she's tired. And it's time to let her rest. The version of you who survived is not going to be the same version of you that thrives. You don't owe anybody strength that's killing you. You don't need to earn your softness, it's already there. You are allowed to be not okay, allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to rest before you absolutely collapse. So bring back out the journal, bring back out the notepad, and I want you to write down this question. What part of me is still trying to prove I'm okay when I'm not? What part of me is still trying to prove I'm okay when I'm not? I want you to get honest about where you are still performing instead of healing, where you are still clenching your jaw when you want to cry, where you are still saying, I've got it, when you are silently drowning. And again, you don't have to fix this today, but it comes back to that awareness. Naming it is the first step in cracking open the armor that we carry while we are in survival mode. And that cracks, those cracks are how the light gets in, how we start healing, how we are able to rewrite our narratives and stop just surviving and start thriving. This is your reminder. You were never meant to function through your pain. You were meant to feel it. And I did a podcast interview, and one of the guests says, the healing is in the feeling. And I love that phrase, and I told her I was going to use it forever. You were meant to feel it, you were meant to heal it, and then you were meant to rest. So, next, we're going to be talking about how to choose softness without losing yourself, because the final flex is not surviving, it is reclaiming your joy. Okay, so choosing ease without guilt. I'm allowed to be soft. You're allowed to be soft. I'm allowed to need. You're allowed to need. I'm allowed to rest. You're allowed to rest. Okay? You have been walking through this training with me, so you already know that you didn't choose strength, it chose you, and oftentimes it saved you. But here's what you also need to know. You're allowed to outgrow the survival that shaped you. You're allowed to lay your armor down. You're allowed to feel safe without being on all the time. You're allowed to rest without guilt. And when you do that, this is when you start claiming ease, softness, receiving, and rest. So, how do we reclaim softness as strength? Somewhere along the lines, we got the message that being soft was weak, that needing made us burdens, that resting was lazy, but it takes more courage to be soft in a world that praised you for being hard. You were not born hardened. You became that way because life didn't give you space to break without shattering. You built strength from necessity. You built independence from survival. But now it's time to reclaim choice and start choosing softness because you're not broken, because you're safe enough to finally be who. Softness is not your downfall. It is the first step in being able to start thriving. So, how do we move from performing strength to building safety? Oftentimes, you spent years bracing for disappointment, for chaos, for abandonment. Your nervous system got so used to the tensions, the stillness feels suspicious. But survival mode strength is all about anticipation. What comes next? What do I need to do? Who do I need to be? That performance, right? Ease starts when you pause the performance, when you start asking yourself, what if I didn't need to prove anything today? When you let your body breathe, when you start building a life where softness has room to exist, not just on vacation, not just in isolation, but in your everyday life. A lot of us struggle with asking, setting, and resetting or resting. And I want to get practical with you because stepping into ease isn't just a mindset shift, it's a language shift, right? So I also like to give you guys scripts because oftentimes we don't even know how to frame things differently. Our narratives have been with us often for decades. So here's some scripts for asking for help. I don't have the capacity for this alone. Can you support me? I'm learning to ask for what I need, and right now I need XYZ. I've always been the strong one, but I'm not okay. Can we talk? We also often have struggles with setting boundaries when we've been in survival mode for so long. Like, oftentimes, we operate from a place of people pleasing, overachieving. So we do, even when our body is screaming no. So, a script for starting to learn how to set boundaries that could be that doesn't work for me. I'm choosing rest right now. I'll revisit that later. I am no longer available for conversations that cost me my peace. And my favorite one is I do not have the capacity for that in this moment. The next one is that rest piece that I keep talking about because so many of the women that I work with, so many of my clients, they struggle with stopping and resting and pausing. So some scripts for practicing rest is I am not behind. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Rest is not a reward, it's a right. Doing nothing is not wasting time, it's reclaiming my nervous system. Every time you use these words, you rewire your nervous system to trust that softness won't cost you your survival. And of course, it's new. Of course, it's scary, but I'm telling you, it's necessary for in order for you to move to the next step. So I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Now I want you to imagine the version of you that doesn't flinch at ease. She doesn't apologize for needing space. Doesn't explain how her boundaries she doesn't explain her boundaries like disclaimers. She doesn't earn her worth through labor. She glows in her softness. She walks into rooms with grace and not tension. She rests because she knows her power doesn't disappear when she pauses. She is you. She is you without the pressure that you put on yourself. I want you to say it to yourself. I'm allowed to be soft. I'm allowed to need. I'm allowed to rest. And I let that settle into your body. You don't have to fight your way through life anymore. And let me tell you, I was a fighter. I was a heavyweight, okay? And being able to learn how to be soft, to embrace that softness that was already inherently there, that I had to learn how to tap into that, changed my whole life. So, as we start to wrap things up, here's your final reflection for today, your prompt. And, I really want you to take these prompts and really spend some time being honest with yourself because it helps you to get to the next step. What does ease feel like? And do I believe I deserve it? The desirability piece is a huge piece. Oftentimes, the reason why we can't accept is because we don't believe that we deserve, right? So I want you to really uncover this. This is not very, not someday, but right now. Because, yeah, do you believe you're allowed to stop performing and start receiving? Do you believe that softness belongs to you and not just other people? Do you believe that peace is not something you earn, but something that you return to? And be honest, because that answer tells you exactly where you need to start the work. If you are not in a space where you believe that you deserve rest or peace or softness, then you need to start there with understanding why you don't believe that you deserve what comes naturally to every single human. So let's be real. You have worn the strong mask long enough. It kept you safe. It got you right here where you are today. But it's time to choose a different story, not one of just surviving, but one where your softness is sacred, where your rest is righteous, where your peace is non negotiable. You're not giving up your power, but embracing ease. You're finally holding it with both hands. And another comment from LinkedIn, when you feel the trigger from something trivial, maybe indicating underlying pain or suppressed feelings. Absolutely. Oftentimes, those triggers are the key to where we need to work more on our healing and digging deeper into what would be required of us to move beyond where we are. So, I just want to remind you that survival made you strong, but healing will make you who. You've done the hard things. You've carried the weight. You've been the one everyone leans on, even when you had nothing left to give. You've won the strong mass so well, even even to the point that you forget that you're wearing it. But here's the truth that no one told us. Strength isn't supposed to be a lifelong personality trait. It's a response to trauma, to abandonment, to the silence that followed what we've said. I'm not okay, and no one hears us. And now you're not broken. You are tired. You don't need to become stronger. You need a place or a space where you just don't have to be. And that's exactly why I created the Survival Made Exodus membership. This isn't another space where you have to perform healing to prove that you're growing. This is just soft landing. Inside the membership, we don't just talk about mindset, even though that's like a huge key piece, but we do the real work. We talk about nervous system regulation so your body stops bracing for the next hit. We talk about embodiment practices so you can feel safe without while being present instead of just performing. We do deep coaching and reflection to unlearn survival and remember your truth. There are monthly trainings to meet you where you are, whether you're collapsing or reclaiming. And it's becoming a private, sacred sisterhood of women who get it because they've lived it too. You don't have to piece yourself together alone. You don't have to figure it out while still pretending to be fine. You don't have to hustle your way into healing. This is where we unlearn the need to earn love, peace, and rest. This is where we break that strong woman narrative conditioning that robbed us of our softness, where we redefine worthiness from the inside out, and where we finally breathe in a space that doesn't ask us to shrink, harden, or hide. And I not promising perfection. I'm promising permission to be real, to be messy, to be in the process. So if you have been nodding all the way through this training, if your heart has whispered finally at one point, this is your sign. This that your next step is not just fixing yourself. It's about finally being ready to feel whole. So if you're interested in joining the membership, you can drop freedom in the comments and I'll circle back with you to give you the link, or you can scan the QR code um, and join. And I would love to have you in there and take these trainings that I give you on a weekly basis to the next level. So I have decided that I'm going to move the lives back a little bit. So I think I was doing it around 6 GMT, which would have been 1 um, Eastern time. I'm going to move it anywhere between 8 and 10 p.m. GMT. I am still recording for season 3 of Survival Mode Disrupted. And while I'm doing that, my schedule fills up quite quickly. So every Sunday, I'll be here with these types of trainings. If you have found this useful, tell me what your biggest takeaway was in the comments. Come back next week, Sunday, where we'll be discussing something else that can help you stop surviving and start thriving. And I love having these conversations. If you have picked up something useful, be sure to forward this to someone else. If you're in the group, in the Facebook group, get invite people to join. If you are watching on YouTube, share the link with someone. These trainings come from my heart because I truly understand what it means to be stuck in survival mode. I was in it for decades. And the reason why I do what I do is because I want to see people to stop suffering in silence. We're in a new year and we can level up so much in 365 days. Give yourself the opportunity to do so. Stop performing. Stop wearing that mask of strength when your vulnerability is the key to your healing. So join me next week, somewhere between 8 and 10 p.m. GMT, and that would be 3 or 5 p.m. Eastern. I will be exactly where you're watching me now. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a very positive week, and I will see you again soon. And again, if you've taken something out of this, share. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Um, and yeah, let's continue this conversation of thriving beyond survival.